Hallo Emil.
Goedemorgen, goedemorgen Sherry.
Hallo.
Goedemorgen.
Hallo Melanie.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is coping with the cold, load shedding, high petrol prices, and whatever they throw at us. Luckily, South Africans are very resilient, so I think we can just about cope with everything. Welcome to everybody this morning to our quarterly webinar, where today we are going to share our lived experiences as persons with disabilities. I will admit people as they come along. We are also recording this to share it with people later on, and also going to publish it on our going to launch a YouTube channel shortly. So that will be a welcome addition for SADA, and we are going to share our quarterly webinars on there as well, so that people can afterwards go and have a look at it. But welcome to everybody, and I think without further ado, let us jump right in. And I think we must start with Cherie Brainard. Cherie, welcome to you and your mom. And can I please ask everybody to mute their microphones, please? It will also help with our bandwidth and to give us a clear sound this morning. I'm also going to mute to stop my video for the moment, which will also help with my. Can you hear me?
There's still, there's still people missing Morphe or something. They must put off their microphone.
Yes.
There's a lot of sound from there.
Can we please ask Mamonku to please mute your. Let me just mute it from my side. Okay, and then Mzazu, I've muted her as well. Sorry, let me just sort out all the logistics, but I think we are ready to go. Okay, so without any further ado, I would like to introduce Cherie Brainard. Cherie is a person with Down syndrome, and she is going to share her lived experience with us this morning. I'm also going to share a presentation. Maybe I can, Emil, would you mind sharing hosting with me so that you can admit people as they come along?
No problem, Melanie. Thank you.
I won't be able to see the admissions if I share my screen.
No problem, I will do it for you.
Okay. Just make Emil co-host. Okay, there we go, Emil. So now you can admit people. Emil, can you maybe just give me screen sharing, please?
Melanie, do you want me to, what do you mean by screen sharing?
Just make it, or you can just give me hosting back, because at the moment I cannot share the screen.
No problem.
And I can just allow everybody to share. There we go. Thank you so much. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Melanie, we can continue.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
You can make it a full screen by pushing that one button, but it depends on you. That one button to take away this.
I would actually like to have Cherie
Okay.
if we can.
Okay.
It's all right.
Okay.
All right. Please continue, Cherie. Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next slide,
Nee,
please.
nee.
Okay, okay.
Good.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to address you today. Next slide, please. When I was born 40 years ago, my mother thought I would take a lot of effort to raise. That was before she understood that the Lord made me perfect, perfect in my own way. She soon realized that although I had changed her life in a way she did not choose, she was still free to choose her attitude. Sometimes our parents are still seen as people who have sinned and to have to be punished. That is why people used to hide their children in the time when I was born, so that society could not judge them. Next slide, please. When all my overseas and other appointments were cancelled by COVID, it was easier for me than for many other people because I am used to having a CV. Not next slide, please.
Sorry, Cherie, I just ran into a little bit of a hiccup here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am trying to change general perceptions about people like me. I know people mostly abort their babies when they find out they would be like me. People asked my mother why she didn't abort me, and many told her that luckily we don't live long. Ladies and gentlemen, our life expectancy nowadays is about 70 years. My mother plans to look after me until we die together one day, which means that she might have to become about 95 years old. I wonder who is going to look after whom at that stage. Next slide, please. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, what we do with our lives is an important choice we make. I try to make every second of my day count. Life is a wonderful adventure. You must just choose to see it. All people die, but not all people really live. I accept failure. Everyone felt at something, but I cannot accept not trying or giving up easily. The greatest illusion is that life should be perfect. Next slide, please. Years ago, no school following a mainstream curriculum was accessible to me. Principal said I would give their schools a bad name. My IQ was right, but my face wrong. When I was admitted into a mainstream school, at long last, no amendments were made for me. I was assessed and handled exactly the same way as the other learners. Regardless of that, my appearance still gave some children a chance to mock me because I looked different from them. And when they bullied me, I answered, "Would you like to have my extra chromosome?" Somehow things worked out because in my last year in school, the children chose me as a class leader. Next slide, please. I tried to stay nice to the bullies and made friends who are still special to me. But even today, I am still hurt by people who are nasty to people who are perceived as being different. You know, in reality, we are all different. That is what makes us unique. We must try to treat all people the way we want to be treated. Never speak down to any person. Self-confidence is important, but we should never think that we are better than anyone else. Next slide, please. I have my own shortcomings, and I have to work on them every day. I am an introvert, and I do get irritated, and I can be stubborn, but that makes me human. Don't compare people. I compete with myself, not with other people. Comparing yourself to others is the biggest waste of time. All people have obstacles to overcome from time to time. I am so lucky that mine has a name. I would have liked to be as bright as many other people, but I have learned to make the best of who I am. Can you say the same? Next slide. Attending a mainstream school helped me to be the first person with Down syndrome to pass a mainstream grade 10 curriculum in South Africa. After leaving school, I attended a national technical college, and there I passed my grade 12 examinations. I was the first person with Down syndrome to be accepted there, and I never had a tutoring class to help me. The classes were presented in English, which I could hardly understand at that stage. And we wrote 3-hour papers, which were set and marked externally. Next slide, please. I passed the N6 course, the highest qualification at the college, and was awarded an education diploma. But dear ladies and gentlemen, you must realize that I had to work much harder than the other students. It was not easy to pass. I failed some of my subjects and had to do them again and again and sometimes again. But I never felt sorry for myself. It is a waste of energy. I believe you are only a failure when you give up trying. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, I am also bright enough to pretend I cannot do something if I don't want to do it. Next slide, please. I identify with the words of Nelson Mandela. You are the master of your fate and the captain of your destiny. That means that our attitude mostly determines who we will become. You cannot always change your circumstances, but you can change the way you look at them. You cannot change the direction of the wind, but you can adjust your sails to reach your destination. This attitude helped me to decide it. This attitude helped me to make the best of the way I am. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think you will not achieve because of a disability or a disadvantage, it is sometimes nothing more than an excuse. I have lived a full life, regardless of many obstacles. Helen Keller was born blind and deaf, and still she passed a university training with success, and she made a great impact on the world. I believe that most failures come from people who make excuses for themselves. Next slide, please. No person with a disadvantage should be excluded from opportunities to develop, but we must also work hard to reach our true potential. I do so every day, and I try to inspire others to do the same. People tried to fit me into their boxes. I made my own box. I am me, and I determine what I do with my challenges, and only I can decide to change them into opportunities. You can do the same. Next slide, please. I have written a book about my life, which was launched in my home language, Afrikaans, and also in English. In my book, I highlighted the fact that people should never give up hope. With support and motivation, you will be able to do many things. Don't focus on what you cannot do, but on what you can do. Next slide, please. I am so happy to work as an assistant teacher. For the last 12 years, I have worked at a school for learners with intellectual disabilities. Education was my field of study. I helped the teacher with lessons and to stimulate the learners. The children accept me as teacher, and they often come to me with their problems because they can relate to me. I cannot have my own children. So the children in my school fill a huge empty space in my life. Next slide, please. I have been blessed with wonderful opportunities. Apart from being chosen as South Africa's Women of the Year in the category Youth Movers, I I have had I have had the opportunity to address conferences of the United Nations in New York and in Geneva, Switzerland. During those speeches, I advocated for the rights of disadvantaged people and people with intellectual disabilities all over the world. I feel so blessed that the Lord can use me just the way I am. Next slide, please. My extra chromosome has given me wonderful opportunities, except for meeting Oprah. I have also been asked to address international conferences in India, Scotland, Jerusalem, Wales, Switzerland, Rome, Berlin, and Brighton outside London. It was also awesome to address a conference of the Royal Society of Medicine and students of the King's College in London. Next slide, please. I also had the opportunity to address the universities of Oxford, Canterbury, and Cambridge in England. In New Zealand, I was interviewed on a national television program. They invited me after I had addressed community and school functions in New Zealand. It was stressful because it was a direct broadcast. And you know, English is my second language. Next slide, please. I have my own radio program on a local radio station called Met FM. Some highlights in 2021 were interviews with Ansala Ramjas, who is the National Executive Director of Down Syndrome South Africa. I also interviewed Yolandi Koki. The lady was held hostage in Yemen for 8 months. I also had the opportunity to interview Harold Verster, who was the managing director of Free State Rugby. Next slide, please. During COVID in 2021, I was blessed to do international virtual presentations. I again addressed the UN on World Down Syndrome Day in New York and in Geneva. I also spoke at the World Down Syndrome Conference in Dubai. In London, I addressed the World Conference on Advanced Nursing as well as the International Public Health Meeting. To top it all, I was very fortunate to address the Party School in London. I could motivate them to do their best. Next slide, please. I am happy to be part of research done by the researchers of the Lockdowns Project in London to help find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. These researchers of the King's College have been doing research on me for the last 7 years. They hope to try to help cure people with Alzheimer's disease. Next slide, please. I enjoy being part of the steering committee of the Guide Young Athletics Project. This is an initiative of the Paralympic Committee, funded by Ball Guides. We need to plan interventions to physically develop toddlers with intellectual disabilities. We strive to help them live a better life. Next slide, please. I believe our main purpose on earth is to serve. We are never too disabled or too young or too old to be of service to other people. I enjoy visiting a woman with Down syndrome. She is my age and lives in an auto town without her family. She cannot do anything for herself, but she can hug me back. I cannot make her speak, but I can make her smile. If we can make the people around us happy, it gives our life purpose. Next slide, please. When my father died more than 20 years ago, I was sure that I would never be happy again. He slipped and fell off a waterfall. They only found his body about a month later. I could never say goodbye to him. I knew my life would never be the same without him. But I decided to accept what I cannot change in life. No matter how rough your life is, don't ever give up. If you stand up one more time, then you fall down, you're a winner. Remember, the past cannot be changed, but the future is still in our hands. Next slide, please. Sure, my heart was broken. How could your heart not break when you lose a loved one? But broken hearts will give us strength and understanding and compassion. I pray for guidance every day. And after my father died, I also prayed for the strength to carry on with my life. I try so hard to focus on the future and to let go of the sad things in my past. Sometimes it is a decision you must make. Next slide, please. When my family is with me, I can only hold out my hand and someone will always help me. May our dear Father provide you with the people and structures you need when you have to hold out your hand. Or even better, may there be times that it will be your hand that will help people over the hurdles of life. Remember, you cannot help everybody, but everybody can help somebody. Next slide, please. Life has no guarantees. If you want guarantees, buy yourself a kettle. The truth is, life is a happiness and sadness, but it depends on us, on what we do with our lives. How we respond to loss and pain is a choice. But somehow we must all move on. Don't ever waste precious time. Next slide, please. Thomas Edison, the man who invented the light bulb, had to leave school at a young age. His mother told him that it was because he was a genius and far too bright for school. Years later, he became one of the greatest inventors of the century. One day, he came across the letter of his old teacher. The letter read, "Your son is intellectually disabled. We cannot teach him at school. He is expelled." Next slide, please. He wrote in his diary that night, Thomas Edison was an intellectually disabled child who had someone who turned him into a genius by believing in him. Often, a positive word can change a person's destiny. I believe our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Next slide, please. In my life, the elevator to success has been out of order, and I had to use the stairs. I had to take one step at a time. With a lot of prayers and hard work, everything worked out for me. So, if it hasn't worked out for you yet, just keep on trying. Remember to believe in yourself. If you think you can't, you can't. Always set your aims as high as possible. We have all got this one precious life. What are we going to do with it today? A person with Down syndrome challenges you to be the best you can be. Next slide, please. I conclude with the following words in a poem by Samantha Higgins. Please don't judge me by my face, by my religion, or my race. Please don't laugh at what I wear, how I look, or do my hair. Please look a little deeper, way down deep inside. Behind my smile, I softly cry. Please look a little deeper, and maybe you will see what's inside of me is what's inside of you. Thank you so much.
Cherie, thank you so very much for sharing your wonderful story. And I think all of us can only applaud. You are a very busy lady. And we thank you so much for carrying the flag for people with disability, being a champion all over the world, and just living your best life, being the best version of yourself. I think you really, really said it all this morning. And I see we've got some questions. Would you like us to just take the questions now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so let me go to Nomzamo. Would you like to ask a question, Nomzamo? You can just unmute, Nunzamo.
Okay. Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Okay. Cherie has a problem of Down syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So I want to know exactly what might be the real cause of Down syndrome? Because I can feel that it's genetic. As for me, I have a child with autism and the search is still not known. So I want to know with Down syndrome, what is it exactly that causes Down syndrome? I just want to know that.
Can I answer this one? Are you okay with that I answer?
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder.
Okay.
It is something that happens to certain people. It's not hereditary, but it is a genetic something that happened. So either the egg or the sperm cell will have an extra part of a chromosome, and it will lie on number 21. So when they fuse and they form a baby, the baby will have 47 and not 46 chromosome. So it is since conception, the baby has an extra chromosome, and the baby grows into a life and a body. And every cell, whether it's your blood or your muscle cells, all your cells has got an extra chromosome. And the result of that is normally then an intellectual disability. Can I answer you more?
Yes, but I want to know at what age is one can get a baby with Down syndrome? Is it particularly with the age, or it's with the chromosomes that you're saying, if an egg or it's a genetic syndrome when one has an extra chromosome? What age is the right age where you can say a person can have a Down syndrome, or anyone can have a child with Down syndrome?
Thank you for that question. When years ago, we all said it's older people, and still when older people do conceive a baby, their chances are much higher. But because more people have babies when they are young, we find the people with Down syndrome now in younger parents. I was 25 when Cherie was born.
Sure. But when is the risk? It's mostly at the older people. At what age roughly, maybe?
From 35, your chances are much higher. But I think I'm a religious person, so I think the Lord determines really whether you are going to be blessed with a child with Down syndrome, because I see it as a blessing, definitely not as a curse. But from the age of 35, your chances are much higher. 40, very high. We have a whole PowerPoint about that, but your chances are much higher from the age of 35, and then 40, very high.
So can you do genetic tests with it, or can you be having something that can prevent that maybe?
You cannot prevent it, but you can do genetic tests, and most people do genetic tests after the age of 35. So many of the babies or the unborn babies are aborted. You can, if you find out you have a baby with Down syndrome, or you are pregnant with a baby with Down syndrome, you can abort the baby, and the tests, they are more reliable tests these days. In the old days, the tests were not very reliable. So yes, you can terminate, but there's no way you can prevent it.
Ish. Oh, okay. Ish, that's very painful. So you know some of the hospitals around here in South Africa where you can go for genetic testing?
Most of the hospitals, when the mother is pregnant, normally they do two things. They will draw blood and they will test, especially when the mothers are older. They do it standard. If you have a gynecologist or somebody like that, or a good doctor, they will be, and you ask for the test to be done, they will do the tests. But you must not fear, Nomzamo, it is not that bad. So I don't fear for this baby to be born. Rather, make your decisions. I'm very, very pleased that I went through the pregnancy. I did not know. So I was lucky I didn't have a choice. But I'm very, very lucky that I did not choose to terminate Cherie. And she learned me more. She taught me what life is all about. When I decided that I would teach my little baby everything, it turned around. She's 40 years old now, that she taught me more about life than anything else in life. I've got a PhD. That didn't teach me much. My child with Down syndrome taught me everything.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
She's such a very, very intelligent young lady. Wow, Sherry.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. Hey, I've been
Thank
answered.
you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Nomzamo. I think those were excellent questions. And thank you so much for, is there any other questions for Cherie and her mother, Suzette? No, I don't see any hands. Maybe if anybody has got some questions, they can just pop it in the chat and we will ask you to respond later. Thank you so very much, Cherie and Suzette, for availing yourself this morning to join our webinar. And please keep on, stay with us for a little while longer. Thank you so much. I would like to now introduce Mr. Emil Gous. Emil is a person on the autism spectrum. I've known Emil for quite some time. We work together often, and it's only a pleasure to introduce him. Emil, would you like to share your screen, or would you like me to share? I have allowed you share to share.
Hello, Melanie, is it possible if you can share?
Okay.
I've got a video that I want to play, but if it's not playing on your side, no matter.
Okay,
No
just
problem.
let me just get to your video, to your slideshow here. It's just a little bit slow. Just give me, just hang with me. Can you see my screen there?
I can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay, so please continue, Emil. It's so nice to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Melanie. Are you sharing your presentation, or are you just, is it possible if you can just click on so that I can see my cover page of my presentation?
This is the top of the screen, Emil. Can you, is the one with your graduation? Is that?
Yes, because I can only see the your downloads, where you download. So I think, you know, we are a little bit slow.
Sorry, it is very, because it shows on my side.
But otherwise, you know, I can share it as well from our side. If you can
Let
just
me
make me a host, I can share from our side.
Let me just share again, Emil. Can you see it now?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. Hope you are well. I hope you are safe. Before I start, I just want to say that I'm currently on hotspot at the moment. 2 minutes before 10, our electricity went off, but I'm on hotspot at the moment, and I charged my laptop in the early hours of this morning to make sure that I think this morning. So don't worry, I've got the plan of action in this difficult time. But anyway, I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad that I'm speaking at this seminar, and I'm also quite fortunate to present with Sherry as well as with Melanie, sharing our personal stories. Sherry, I want to thank you as well. You helped me quite a lot last year with regards to or was the year before, with regards to our Filicide memorial, and you also helped me out with the video a couple of weeks ago. So I really want to thank you as well, in such an honor as well, and the work that you're doing in the field of disability. So thank you for that. Melanie, thank you once again also for this opportunity. Myself and Melanie were quite a few months together, well, a couple of years with regards to disability, and also with my responsibilities on the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, where I represent underrepresented groups, and Melanie helped me out quite a bit with regards to SADA's involvement and with general information. So really, I want to thank you for all the work that you're currently doing with me, Melanie, as well as SADA, and I really hope that we can continue with this relationship. We talked about stories, and what's quite significant about today is the fact that we learn about stories, we learn about people's personal experiences, and that is why we're currently doing what we're doing, to inspire, to motivate, to encourage. But the main importance is to initiate change. And I've recently been invited to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda. where I represented not only the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, but I represented neurodiversity and underrepresented groups at this meeting. And that is where I saw the value of personal stories. And as a disabled person, I must let you know that although there was photos that was taken of me standing on the podium to speak in front of a crowd of 2,000 people, although there's some videos that was posted on social media about me, I want to elaborate on the fact that this was an able-bodied meeting where lots of politicians attended from all over the Commonwealth, lots of organizations attended this meeting. There were a lot of companies, well-known people that attended this meeting. But as a disabled people, we were in the minority. And as such, I need to fight for my position to be able to speak at this able-bodied event. So it was I was quite fortunate to attend this meeting, and I was proud to attend this meeting, but I just want to let you know that I fought for my position to be able to speak at this meeting, or to be able to be granted an opportunity to speak in front of a crowd. But yet again, you know, that is how these meetings goes. And I'm quite fortunate to announce that the next Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will be hosted in Samoa in 2024. And I came up with an initiative to allow persons with disabilities to have a presence at these meetings. Because at Chochem, you've got a women's meeting, you've got an economic meeting forum, you've got also a Commonwealth People's Forum, which a majority of your persons with disabilities attended. And then you've got the youth forum. But my main question, where does disability fit in? And therefore, I'm working on a process to announce a 5th forum meeting, and that will be the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forums meeting, where we will have a full representation of persons with disabilities from all over, underrepresented groups, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, different kinds of opinions will have their own forum, so that we can ask questions, so that we can engage with policymakers, and so that we can initiate change and also learn from personal stories. So I'm quite fortunate to be in this position to make sure that this happens. And this will be in 2024. But anyway, I want to come to my personal story. So if I may, I want to start off by saying that my name is Emil Gous. I represent underrepresented groups on the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum. I'm also an autism self-advocate, and I'm also the vice chairman of the National Executive Committee of Autism South Africa. I'm a specialist teacher by trade, and I'm also a PhD student who submitted his PhD dissertation yesterday. But I want to tell you that as an individual on the autism spectrum, I was exposed to different kinds of masculinity and ableism. And as such, society, treated me different, and society didn't understand my behavior. I was nonverbal to the age of 15 years, where I struggled to communicate. I was placed into a mainstream education system, and I was isolated, but through continuous support from a parental figure, that is how I achieved my goals. So I want to start off by playing this video, but if this video is not playing, I can talk you through it. So Melanie, is the video playing? Okay, brilliant. So what we need to do is, Melanie, if you can share your screen with the sound, it will also be wonderful.
I'm so sorry, Emil.
It It was Yuri Bronfenbrenner who said that individuals' behavior is shaped by the environment. Human beings are social environments simultaneously. But to put a dolphin in an ecosystem which is totally different from his, the possibility occur they won't be able to survive. As an individual, to adapt to my environment because my experience. I believe that through each experience, I've learned new skills on emotional, spiritual, and mentally. In this, I will explain
Leo round surrounding a part like
such as a school,
gel or gel no oil. Gel oil yes.
Okay, thank you. This was just a short clip that I played. If I might ask to please mute your, can I please ask you to please mute your microphone? Because I want to talk to you through my presentation as well. Okay. Anyway, now the video that I played was just a formal introduction with regards to how does an individual with autism fit into society. And depending on the challenges that one experiences, through each environment, through each situation, different people, your behavior changes. And therefore the expectations also have got the influences in one's behavior. As someone with autism, if I walk down the street, and as you see me, neurotypical people will think that I do not present different challenges because I'm talking to you normally. I'm communicating with you, I'm making eye contact, I look able-bodied. But as soon as I'm placed in a different environment, my behavior changes. And this forms part of my presentation today. And I want to take you through this journey with me by sharing my personal experiences as an individual with autism and how continuous support changed my life. But firstly, I want to look at this third slide. Now, this is one of my late mom's favorite poem called The Road Not Taken. It's like as you walk in a forest, you've got two roads that you need to choose which one you're going to take. And although you are on the road, you need to take the one less traveled. And if you choose a road, you will know that each road has got specific challenges. It's got different potholes. You've got some curves, but then you've got the smooth part. And that is how I see my life. And that is how I see the support that I received from my mom. You are uncertain of the road that you chose, but you are aware and you will be capable of accepting the fact that you are taking this road less traveled and you are taking it with full support and with full force. Now, as you could see on my fourth slide, I was a young boy, happy in a familiar home environment with familiar people. But as soon as I was placed in a different environment, my behavior changed. And this walks into my fifth slide. As you could see on the slide on your left-hand side, or the photo on your left-hand side, excuse me, I was quite happy. I was with people that I knew. Although I couldn't communicate, I was quite comfortable. This was at my granny's house. But as soon as I was placed in a different environment, the photo on your right-hand side, my behavior changed. I was in a school environment. And I officially got my diagnosis with autism at the age of 3.5 years. It was actually a pre-primary school educator who noticed that I portrayed ASD tendencies. The tendencies that I portrayed were the following: struggled to communicate, in fact, didn't communicate at all, struggled to making eye contact, general frustration was present in my behavior, made use of non-verbal hand gestures to express myself. There was general anxiety present in my behavior. I would basically self-harm, and I would stim a lot, portraying rocky movements backwards and forwards. And that was one of the common things that I portrayed in the formal schooling environment. So my parents were called in by the principal, and they recommended my parents for me to go see service providers such as an educational psychologist. And this was a backwards and forwards process. I officially got my diagnosis at the age of 3.5 years at the University of Johannesburg. And the specialist suggested that I need to be placed in an institution because they believed that I would not achieve my goals, that I would not cope in a formal education setting. I would not work one day. I would not be able to communicate. So immediately as a young parent, my parents were confronted with a death sentence, if you can call it that, because they were in an unfortunate position where there was a label that was placed before me or on me, and they did not know what to do. So my parents decided to basically to give me each opportunity by calling in the support of a therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, to able to support us. And this process continued from the age of 3.5 years to the age of 9 years. And it was actually one educational educational psychologist who actually said that Emil will achieve his goals. It just takes time and patience. And that words of encouragement encouraged my parents to support me continuously. And therefore I received occupational and speech therapy from my diagnosis from the age of 3.5 years to the age of 9 years. And as you would see on the next slide, I presented different challenges. The next slide, please, Melanie, slide number 6. As you can see on the photos, the challenges that I had was with regards to the physical that one experienced with autism, such as the finer motor, gross motor challenges. I experienced challenges with speech. I received occupational therapy with regards to my gross motor, finer motor. You can actually see it basically on the fact that on the photo I had an open mouth, and therefore I also present challenges with climbing over things, hand-eye coordination and different perceptual skills. And with continuous support from an occupational therapist, it was a continuous process in order for me to be able to achieve my goals. And this process basically continued until 9 years, until grade 2, grade 3. I was placed into a mainstream education system. And as such, that came with different support structures that supported me. So during this process of formal education in the formal education system, I did different activities to improve my gross motor skills, extramural activities such as swimming, playing tennis, doing karate. This was beneficial towards my development as well, because my parents believed that I need an opportunity to be able to achieve my goals. similar to the rest of the students. The next photo is a photo of myself and my mom. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I unfortunately lost my mom in 2020. And it was quite difficult for me during this time because my mom became not only my primary supporter, but she was the one who supported me emotionally, socially. She was my friend, and she was the one who never gave up on me. Although I had the support from my father, as well, my father became the financial supporter, but my mom was the one that was basically involved in our lives for 27, 28 years. And it was extremely challenging losing her, but she equipped me with skills for me to continue with life, and she gave me the greatest gift, and that was education. Because if it wasn't for education, I would not be able to come here and speak to you today and speak to you as a PhD candidate and also as a self-advocate. So next slide, please. When you look at the different challenges that one presents with autism, you look at it from cognitive, emotional, social, as well as physical domains. But when you look at it emotionally, I will break it down to you according to my personal experiences. Like I said, I was non-verbal until the age of 15. And I struggled to express my emotions. I struggled to communicate. I struggled to basically express myself to my parents, to speak to different teachers, and as well to students, and also to close family members as well. And immediately there was a label that was presented towards me because it felt like society basically isolated us because I was different from the norm. And I became a victim of emotional abuse. I was not invited into different social groups and was immediately isolated. This immediately affected my self-confidence levels, and I did not compete in different extramural activities because I was different. And that's the thing about continuous fight or flight. Because of the rejection that I experienced as a individual with autism in society, I portrayed the flight response by, for instance, not making eye contact. I did in different formats. I basically I made use of normal hand gestures, especially when I was frustrated as well. I wanted to avoid the situation in different social settings, but my parents taught me to continuously fight, stay in the situation, and that is how you learn different skills. And that was what I portrayed. Now, when you look at the next slide, this is a photo of me as a young student. I was here around 10, 11 years old. I looked quite formal, but I was in a unique situation because of my diagnosis where I needed to work harder than the rest of the students. And it was late nights that basically helped me to prepare for examinations and to do homework. And if you look specifically at the autism spectrum, I experienced sensory overload in different environments. And sensory overload was quite present in a formal education system where I struggled to listen, I struggled to get attention, I struggled to pay attention to the teachers. I struggled to complete homework on my own. And yet again, through the support of a mother figure, she supported me through this process, who helped me with organization, with planning. And it was late nights and hard work. I worked 10 times harder to complete work as well. And yes, I got a lack of sleep, but I was prepared for examinations. And although I did well, my mom was quite hesitant about my future because with regards to the environment, all the environment, the formal schooling system accept me as a student on the autism spectrum. What will continue after primary school? William, you'll go to university. William, you'll finish high school. William, you'll work one day work, or will the working environment accommodate or provide the reasonable accommodations for him to be able to cope in a formal working environment? So that was the common questions at that young time that my mom had. So to make my education process easier, she decided to enroll me into a remedial for school to accommodate my challenge that I experienced. But what was quite fascinating is the fact that I never tried to present my autism tendencies at school because I knew it would be it would basically contribute a lot towards isolation that I experienced at school, and it would also um, it will also contribute a lot towards the discrimination. And therefore, I decided to rather have meltdowns at home. I would rather portray my nonverbal hand gestures in a safe environment at home, where I'm safe and where my mom would be able to assist me. Because I knew that, I would basically expose myself in a formal education system. And yet again, I felt that the education system at that time was not ready to accommodate a student that portrayed different tendencies in a typical environment. But when you look at meltdowns, you know, at the meltdowns that I portrayed, I tend to distance myself from the environment because I knew that, I would become a victim of emotional abuse. And I protect my senses visually, auditively, and as well as sensory in order for me to be able to cope in a specific environment. And that was some tendencies that I've learned throughout the years, or sorry, coping mechanisms that I've learned to cope with these tendencies. For instance, when I'm in a formal environment or a overcrowded environment where there's a lot of people, I would basically try non-verbal hand gestures, or I would basically make use of a stress ball, or I would basically change from side to side to be able to cope with the sensory overload in order for me to portray the fight response and not flee from the situation. Communication was one of my biggest challenges, and as an adult now that I'm verbal, my behavior changed. And as someone who basically have got different coping mechanisms that one would try in a sensory overloading situations, I know that that I need to protect my senses and I need to protect myself. So what I've noticed that as someone who's basically now verbal, my mouth tones becomes louder, where my voice tones becomes louder because of the speech delay that I had when I was growing up as a toddler into young adulthood. So it's one of the things I'm currently working on, and it is through continuous stimulation exposure, not fleeing from a situation, that I learn these skills every single time to cope in a specific environment. Next slide, please. When you look at the social challenges, which was one of my biggest things, and I would say that in different environments, one social skills vary. For instance, after the age of 15, where I started to communicate in full sentences, still portrayed copied speech, but as soon as my speech started to develop, and as soon as I got used comfortable, I started to communicate more. My vocabulary expanded. basically, I started to understand different social cues, how to start a conversation, how to end a conversation. I started to understand humor, sarcasm. I started to understand people's nonverbal language, especially referring to their body language. Um, if someone portrays happiness, sadness, and sadness, what does it mean? And I needed to basically learn this. Remember, these skills didn't occur spontaneously, so I need to learn it through each exposure with different people. And this process actually continued until university. I would say until my fifth year at university, where I started to communicate spontaneously with the university students. So yeah, but it was through continuous stimulation and motivation from my parents that helped me to be able to cope in a specific environment. And yet again, after age of 15, like I said, my social skills started to develop more, and I participated in different activities. I always had, although I couldn't speak before 15, I always had the desire to be able to form part of a environment. I always had the desire to form part of different social groups. I wanted to be included and not excluded. And therefore, I took each opportunity to participate where I could, such as the review. And although it was sensory overwhelming, and although there were a lot of sensory challenges that I was confronted with, I wanted to participate. And like I said previously, I coped when I'm overwhelmed. I implemented different coping mechanisms to help me cope in a sensory overwhelming situation. Next slide, please. As an 18-year-old student on the autism spectrum, communication started to develop simultaneously. And yet again, I've learned different coping mechanisms in order for me to cope. And I've learned how to communicate with people with regards to how to start a conversation, how to end a conversation, not to flood people with information, when to stop the conversation. And that was through the help of an educational psychologist at university who helped me with this process. So my speech developed simultaneously through each conversation that I had. Next one, please. Next slide, please. As someone who is currently 29 years old, I'm still working on my communication, and you would realize that, or you would recognize that I portray echolalia, which is a common autistic trait with regards to speech, where I would repeat information, or where I would struggle to present or pronounce certain words. Just keep in mind it was due to my delay. But anyway, it was impossible for me to read facial expressions when I was placed in an overwhelming environment. Now, we tend to have sensory blindness, which is the brain's ability to cut out sensory information. Now, when you look at generally about autistic traits with regards to sensory overload, majority of the autistic individuals experience sensory challenges with regards to visually as well as auditively. Numerous case studies show that autistic adults who's auditively sensitive, they would basically cut out sensory overload from the different sounds with regards to a different environment. But for me personally, my biggest challenge is visually, where I cannot see the faces of people when I'm in an overcrowded environment. And it made it extremely difficult for me to read and to read the facial expressions of people. And yet again, I couldn't distinguish between people's body language, their sadness, happiness, and also humor was extremely difficult for me. But yet again, through continuous support, I achieved my goals. Next slide, please. The following photos is basically where I started to yes, we can continue the slide. I will show you photos of my development as a young adult, but As someone who coped in environments with his unique challenges, I always had the desire to learn. And my parents decided not to isolate me, to include me in everything. And as an adult now, I do not like exclusion. When I'm excluded, it's something that I take very seriously, and I want to be included in everything. And and that is how I grew up, because I saw inclusion into different activities as my process of developing my speech, my emotional well-being, and also my coping mechanisms in society. As a South African man, I love sport. I grew up in a sport family. My brother was an active sports person. He represented the junior South African junior side in athletics. He got national colors for athletics. So with his athletics, I was I was exposed to different sports. And yet again, with my sensory challenges, I've learned to cope in overwhelming environments. So as a youngster, as soon as I entered big sports stadiums or athletic stadiums, although I experienced sensory overload, I learned to enjoy the experience because it helped me to cope. It helped me to develop my skills, and yet again, it was also stress reliever as well. I love rugby, as someone who basically loves the sport, is interested. I can tell you general statistics about different players, where they were born, how much matches they played. But I did not see my autism as something that would basically that will prevent me from enjoying the sport that I love, because it relieves stress. And therefore, it helped me yet again to stimulate my brain and help me to cope in different environments. Next slide, please. I talked about the decision that my parents made, and with regards to my education system to mainstream school. Although I coped well with support, there was always question marks, and therefore to protect my emotional well-being, I was placed into remedial high school. And can you believe that as soon as I was placed into a remedial school, keeping in mind that the remedial education system, where you've got fewer students in the classroom, you've got specialist teachers that are basically that are well known with autism, who who've got more knowledge about autism as in mainstream schools. I felt immediately accommodated. Just to give you an idea, the first day that I walked into the mainstream, the first day that I walked into the remedial school was the first day that I could see the faces of students because of the classroom size. It was smaller, it was not overpopulated, and it was an enjoyable experience. And because of that decision, since that time, my academic progress started to develop. I started to do well. And that is also where my communication skills were started to develop as soon as I was placed into a small environment. Next slide, please. And that eventually led to another where I got university exemption. As someone who learned about this autism diagnosis, and as someone who wanted to make a difference in society, I decided to study education because I believed that I could encourage parents and other students on the autism spectrum not to give up. And because of my past experiences with regards to autism and the challenges that myself and my mother went through, it was an ideal opportunity for us to give back to give them advice. And that is where I started, where I actually decided to study education. So I enrolled for an education degree at the University of Pretoria. And yes, with regards to my different challenges I experienced sensory wise, it was another thing because I experienced different challenges emotionally, socially, sensory wise. As soon as I was placed into a different environment, such as a formal school environment to a university environment, immediately I felt that I felt that I needed to basically learn to cope yet again with sensory challenges and with the environment. And yeah, it was a unique experience, but through that experiences, I've learned to cope in different environments, and that's what helped me in order for me to succeed and to not avoid different environments. Next slide, please. If you look at my progress that I made as someone who was non-communicative until now, when looking at my different life experiences and also the achievements that I've experienced, um, neuroplasticity was present. And those of you who's not familiar with the concept of neuroplasticity, it's the brain's ability to change by forming new connections amongst neurons in response to the environmental input. It's also the ability of the brain to establish new neural networks to increase the speed and the efficiency. And it's also the brain's ability to develop new basic skills. That would be basic skills such as reading, writing, communicating, gross motor development, finer motor development, um, forming new connections with people, coping academically well. Um, yes, I still experience challenges um, with planning organization, and that will be my challenge that I will experience throughout the rest of my life. But you know, I cope quite well with it, and I've got different measures in place in order for me to cope. Remember, autism is a lifelong diagnosis, and one can't change the diagnosis. You will still experience different challenges on the different avenues that I explained quite frequently in my presentation. But it's with the support that you have and also the measures that you implement in order for you to cope. That's what makes the difference, and your ability to succeed in what you're doing, and for you to function quite efficiently in society. Next slide, please. Um, okay, we can go to the next slide, Milan, because I already explained this one quite efficiently. Yes, so for me personally, as an individual on the autism spectrum, one of my main aims to study education was to learn more about the autism spectrum in general. So therefore, I majored in psychology as well as learning support and history as well. But I wanted to learn more about me. Why did I experience certain challenges? What makes me different from other individuals with autism? And I must say that when I started with psychology, the module, I received a textbook which is basically 400 pages, and there was only a section about autism that was basically just that big. It didn't even fit half of a page. And yet again, it was although it was quite interesting for me to read this information, it was quite, I was quite confused because, they did not include the sensory challenges. They did not include, the interpersonal challenges. Your challenge with organization, with planning, with sensory overload. And that was one of the things that I basically started to familiarize myself as I got to speak to most autistic adults, getting involved with the autistic community, speaking to a lot of people. And and I believe that when you look at university as well, I believe that the environment yet again was an ableist, able-bodied environment, and the environment did not accommodate an autistic individual, and therefore, my PhD thesis focuses on, yes, it focuses on my personal experiences, the importance of the story, my experiences as an autistic adult at university, but what do we need to do in order to make universities more accessible, more inclusive? What reasonable accommodations can we put there in order to make sure that persons with autism and also those from underrepresented groups can be accommodated at university as well? And therefore, yet again, if the environment is more inclusive and accessible and certain measures are implemented, these individuals can cope and they can succeed and they can fulfill their own potential. Next slide, please. So far I've adapted, and I believe that yes, I'll self-actualize, but yet again, there's different challenges, different environments where I still need to, that I still need to cope, and there's different environments you got where I need to be able to implement different measures. So I believe that I survived because my phenotype, because I've learned to adapt it to a changing environment, but um, each learning environment is rewarding because I've learned that I can modify my behavior in different social environments. I've learned that through each experience, I can implement different coping mechanisms because I am pre-wired to learn. To conclude, I want to say that autism is not a death sentence. And as an individual on autism spectrum, I want to elaborate on continuous support, the exposure that one received, and also when you look at the different reasonable accommodations that's implemented in society, I want us to be able to put the fight forward because I'm just one out of thousands of examples of autistic individuals who show that they can cope in different environments. According to my personal experiences, the more exposure I got, the more skills I've developed. And for me, it was one step towards independence. So I really want to thank you for this presentation and for granting me the opportunity to present to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Emil. What a wonderful presentation. And thank you for explaining autism. I just from my side want to ask you something. I'm thinking about television programs, like for instance, The Good Doctor, and there are a couple of them, that showcase persons with on the autism spectrum. What do you think about such programs?
You see, Melanie, it's quite interesting. Yeah, you see, yeah, it's actually a very interesting question because it's one of the things that I actually mentioned last week on the Autism Symposium. When you look at Hollywood, Hollywood is our biggest educator with regards to ASD. And in general, persons with disabilities as well, if you think about that, because that is how society will basically educate themselves. But when you look at autism, you've got numerous if that was developed in a series like The Good Doctor. To mention your example, you've got the Big Bang Theory as self-diagnose themselves by watching the program. So I think it will give an accurate prognosis with regards to the autism spectrum, and then people start to familiarize themselves. And remember, these programs have got also advisors on the autism spectrum that will also help them as well to familiarize themselves or to characterize the autistic traits. But one must remember always that when you look at the research, although we can learn from different experiences, we can learn from different people, different movies that was made in America, England, Great Britain, Europe. It's not always relevant because remember, our socioeconomic circumstances are different. We've got a lot of inequality that's currently in our country with regards to neurodiversity. We've got the highest unemployment rate in the world. And also, so it's quite difficult, and therefore we need more examples from the greater south.
Yes.
because that's the biggest gap that we experience. But when you look at, yes, we can, when you look at the Hollywood and movies that was made, yes, I think, they give an accurate description with regards to this. But what about those who's non-verbal? What about, because the autism spectrum is very broad. You've got, it's if you look at the neurodiverse movement, you've got different variations of the neurodiversity, and autism is only one of them. And what you find is that it's not only majority of the autistic adults are diagnosed with one or more impairments as well, with regards to dyslexia, alexia, and so forth and so forth. So yeah, so I think, we can learn from that, but keep in mind that, the diagnosis is very broad, and we need to make it relevant according to our lived experiences.
Yes, you note a very important thing is that even in a certain type of disability, there's always diversity. There's no two
Yes.
persons with this, even in the same disability category, that are the same. And we've got specific needs. I refrain from saying special needs. We are all special. We've got specific needs, and that those are the ones that needs to be addressed. We've got a question from Shelley. She asked Emil, what made the biggest impact in your developing speech at the age of 15?
It's actually a very important question. It's actually a very common one when I speak at conferences, when I share my personal story. Parents tend to ask me that as well, and also various service providers. But I think, when you look at that, when you look at the question, and you look at my experiences as a adult on the autism spectrum, there were numerous contributing factors that helped me with regards to my development of my speech. It was, I think what contributed a lot was the fact that my the support that I received from service providers such as the speech therapist, who helped me from a very young age. Since my diagnosis at the age of 3.5 years, I went for speech therapy. And this process continued with occupational therapy to make the muscles in my mouth strong again. When I talk about, the motor, but the gross motor, finer motor, you know, um,
That's
development, that contribute a lot towards my speech development.
yes.
And also, I think, yet again, exposure that I received from in different social situations. I remember I had a mom that continuously worked with me, with different things. She, look, it was a continuous, for instance, when after I received occupational speech therapy, my mom would basically in the afternoons, she will help me also. She will continue with the work. So it was, the additional effort my mom placed as well, and also the social exposure that I received. And yes, there were challenges with regards to sensory overload. There were meltdowns. Um, yes, there were a lot of things as within one needs to consider, but I was continuously exposed as well, and I think that was one of the contributing factors
Yeah.
that basically helped me to develop my speech. So it was a process of 14, 15 years that, well, yeah, 13, 14 years that helped me to be able to be at this point. So there were numerous things that helped me with my speech development. None of the one are most important than the other, because all play their parts, but in my mind, that was the most important.
Okay, then just one last question. You're talking about meltdowns now. So Shelley also asked, what is the best coping mechanism for you to help you with sensory overload?
Well, depending on the environment, depending on the situation, when you look at visually, auditively, we tend to refer to it as the autism survival kit. For instance, where it changes for one person to one person, where one implements different strategies that will help him cope in different environments. But most of the autistic adults, for instance, if they're in an overpopulated environment, they will have, for instance, a stress ball that will have to that they would basically press. They will also maybe put on earphones. They will avoid sound in different overpopulated environments. Some will also wear sunglasses, to avoid making eye contact with people. Also, for instance, there's an autistic adult that I know. He basically copes by focusing on his interest, by watching YouTube videos of his interest, or even reading a lot of books on his interest. For instance, comic books or something along that line. But for me personally, I cope by when I'm in an overpopulated environment such as a mall or a big shopping center. I would basically walk from side to side to avoid sensory overload. I would also I would basically also make use of a stress ball that I have in my pocket that will help me to cope. So yet again, it's something that an individual can adapt according to their interests. So that is one of the things as well that I implement. And I think and each person is different. One of the most important things I want to remind everyone is that autism is not so all size fits all approach, and therefore one implements, one adapts one's life according to one's circumstances and interests. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure if there are any more questions, we can forward them to you by email. And but thank you so very much, Emil, for sharing this morning. And you and Cherie has really brought so much to this webinar this morning. So I cannot compete with the two of you, but let me share my lived experiences as well. As a person of short stature, I'm going to share my screen a little bit again. Okay, so yeah, so this is me. I'm Milani Libber, and like Emil and Cherie, my home language is also Afrikaans. So please pardon me if I run out of English. So let me tell you a little bit about. Can you see my screen? Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, Milan, we see your screen.
Okay, all right. So let me tell you a bit about myself, my childhood. I'm the only child to my mom and dad, Darby and Doris Human. I was born in Rustenburg, in the little town of Rustenburg near the Magaliesburg. And I think my father always wished for a boy. He was a rugby player, so I'm sure he was very disappointed at first with this tiny little girl, but we grew very, very close. And luckily, I had the support of a very loving family. So when I was born, I was diagnosed. First of all, they didn't know what was wrong with me. Started to do X-rays and medical exams from birth, actually. And then they sent my mom and dad home with me just to say, enjoy her while you've got her. She won't live, much older than 8 or 9 months. And here I am today, and a grandmother, may I add, of 56 years old. And nothing has been easy in my life. That I can share right out. But from childhood, I had a loving family and supported me and didn't make life easy for me at all. They just treated me like any other person, especially my father, who was actually pushing me all the way. I had a lot of surgeries growing up, experimental surgeries, most of them. In those days, they didn't know why I was so tiny. And they thought, okay, well, because you're so tiny, let's just stretch her a little bit. So they have, from one of these surgeries they actually put pins in my knees and in my head with weights on either end, and they actually stretched me, tried to stretch my spine. All they have accomplished with that operation was to pull my vertebrae apart, which paralyzed me. And for a bit. But luckily, and that I think was the first miracle of my life, and I've experienced a number of miracles. But I think being able to recover from that was a miracle in itself. So luckily, I regained my ability to walk. I've had I think 39 surgeries to date. So a lot of back surgeries, a lot of, for my spine. I have severe scoliosis and kyphosis, and I've had a lot of leg surgeries as well. I was actually walking fine. I was walking normally, but my one leg was shorter than the other one. And my type of dwarfism that I've got, it's got a terrible name. It's Conradi-Heinerman-Happel syndrome. And what makes it very rare is that it is the growth discrepancy is crisscrossed across my body. Like my left arm is a little shorter than the right. My right leg is shorter than the left. And then again, my left foot is shorter. And the one side of my back is shorter than the other one. So yeah, quite challenging. And for the medical professionals, they don't know. They've never seen anything like it before. It has only been picked up in 4 families across the world. And what they know is that only the females survive this condition. Luckily for me, I don't present with all of the symptoms. Some of the symptoms include a lung and heart failure. So luckily I was spared that. So yes, I have grown up, went to a special school in those days. Inclusive education was unheard of in my day. So I was shipped off to a boarding school at the age of almost 6, where I attended a school near Hartbeespoort Dam called Meerhof. And then when I went to high school, my parents transferred me to Elizabeth Conradi School in Kimberley, where I still received physiotherapy, a little bit of occupational therapy, but mostly physiotherapy. It was also especially for my lungs. My lungs have got quite a restricted due to my scoliosis. So they focused on strengthening my lungs and improving my physical strength, especially my back. I had to wear braces throughout most of my childhood. I think up until the age of 13, 14, I was almost continuously in a back brace to support my spine. I think nowadays, with the improved medical technology, that is not used as much. And so I think children now are much better off than in my day. But after school, I completed my matric in Elizabeth Conradi, and then I wanted to study. And unfortunately, also at that stage, sorry, I'm just admitting someone. At that stage, also, universities were not inclusive. I remember when I started at UNISA, and then I decided, let me try and go to a regular university. So I went to Stellenbosch, and I really struggled. The campus wasn't, it was very long distances for me to walk. It wasn't disability friendly, if I can call it that, accessible. So it was very hard for me. So I returned home the next year to continue through UNISA. Unfortunately, in that year, my health took a turn for the worst, and I had to abandon my studies, which I till this day regret so much. But let me tell you, there is no better university than the School of Life and the School of Hard Knocks, which I have attended extensively. So then I decided, okay, to continue studies at home. I did secretarial courses, and I started to work. And then I met this guy, the love of my life. And he was an average height person. Oh, sorry, I actually forgot. You see, I am so used to being a person of short stature, I forget how tiny I actually am. So I am 1 meter, 18 centimeters tall, about the size of a 6, maybe 7-year-old child. And yeah, living in a life, in a world that is not designed for small people, it presents some challenges, but I will share some of that a little bit later. So after school, and when I met my husband, he was an average height person. Everybody said, okay, my goodness, this is going to be a fairy tale wedding, which we had. But something that Sherry also mentioned is that there are no guarantees in life. And we also ended up after 18 years of marriage as a divorce statistic. Unfortunately, that was a very traumatic experience for me. But during those 18 years, I can tell you that there was bliss. There were there were lots and lots of happy times, but sad times as well. We have lost a little baby girl after birth. We initially thought that we might adopt because my condition is genetic, and I was afraid that it would carry over to my baby. But then when you see all your girlfriends getting pregnant and you really would like to have a baby of your own, there is no stopping you. So we had genetic testing done and everything seemed perfect and normal. I got pregnant easily, but I was really sick from the start. And at 34 weeks, we lost our baby girl. And that was absolutely devastating to me and to my husband as well. And we then decided to refrain from having our own children and to stick with the idea or the need to adopt a baby. We applied everywhere. And that I think is where I encountered discrimination for the first time, really, because we were shown away by all the adoption agencies, by the churches. They just plainly said that they have never given a child to a disabled woman before. So unfortunately, that was very problematic for us. And then we decided to adopt privately. But as God shone his light on us, we first adopted a baby who is called Armand, now 29 years old. Can you please mute? Okay, I've just muted Jenny. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so we have adopted our boy, Armand, first. He is now 29 years old, a magnificent beast, and he's into IT. And then 3 years later, we adopted Simone, our little girl, who is now a mother herself. She's 26 years now, and she has got our little granddaughter, Lenique, who is the love of all our lives and the sunshine in all our lives. Raising the children were difficult for me in the sense that I am small and I could carry them until they were about 6 months old. And then I had to make all kinds of little ways for me to adapt. In the kitchen, I have, like you see on the picture there, I've got little step stools. But when carrying a baby, you can't, you have to make a plan. So what I used to do is I dress them in the bedroom, on the bed, put them into the pram, push them to the bath, put them in the bath and do the bathing, take them out and put them back into the pram and all the way back to the bedroom where I would dress them. Little things like that. But I coped. I didn't have any help at that stage. I just had to learn how to do things a little differently. And I think that is something that all persons with disabilities can testify to, is that we make our own way. We invent, there's just, you just find a way to do it. My father always used to tell me, there is no such thing as I cannot. You try, and then you try some more, and you try some more. And even if you absolutely cannot do something, you then ask for help. And that is something that was also installed in all of us in our school, Elizabeth Conradi, where they absolutely taught us to do things for yourself and not to pity yourself and not to sit in the corner and feel that you are not worthy, that you're not capable. You just do it. So raising a family was exciting, challenging, rewarding, and it was absolutely, I loved every minute of it. We moved to Cape Town about 2000 when my ex-husband, moved his career from the mining industry into IT. And I think that is maybe where the love of IT was instilled in my son, who is in the career till today. But yes, that was also the starting point for me after my divorce in 2007 of a completely new life. I was never able to drive. And all of a sudden, I was left with two smallish children, and I had to. You know, sometimes life gives you a few slaps to wake you up. And I just had to learn how to drive. I got my driver's license at the age of 43. And it is until today the biggest blessing in my life that I can get into my own little car and go wherever I please. I don't think people realize the value of being independent, of being mobile. It is the greatest treasure. And let me tell you, there is no money that can buy health and independence. That is something that I am thankful for every single day. And also, I must say, living with an attitude of gratitude has pulled me through some very difficult times in my life. At one stage, a couple of years ago, there was a period of 5 years in which I had 13 major orthopedic surgeries. I was left with broken legs, 2 femurs, and my one leg, a tib fib, for about years. That I couldn't get out of bed.
You can come have a look here. You can't see a standing, but you'll see a picture of her.
Sorry, let me just mute this participant quickly. I'm sorry. Okay, she's muted. So at that stage, even in the most horrific pain, with all those fractures, I was still grateful and thankful for the painkillers on my bedside table. I was so thankful for my mom who nursed me through all of those years, who helped me regain my mobility, for therapists and doctors who would really go the extra mile to help me to walk again, although I'm using crutches today. There's always something to be grateful for. There's always something to drive you forward. So then after a couple of moves, I was able to come back to Cape Town, where I'm living now. And a couple of years ago, I applied for a job at the South African Disability Alliance, where I am until today the secretariat. And I enjoy it thoroughly because I can somehow make a little difference in the lives of persons with disabilities through what we do. But when I joined SADA, which is an umbrella organization for the disability sector, and we've got members, all the national disability organizations across the disability spectrum are members of SADA, I realized that there is something lacking. There was no representation for persons of short stature like myself. So I established an NPO with the name of Equal Citizens of Short Stature. And it's growing. We've got about 120 members now, persons of short stature, and it's really doing so great. And before I continue with this presentation, I would actually like to show you a video of one of my members, Itumaleng Make, just to give you a little bit of a background, show you what a day in the life of a person of short stature looks like.
My name is Itumeleng. I'm 40 years of age. I work for the Department of Home Affairs. I stay with my siblings. There are 3. I have 3 siblings, and then all of them, they are average sizes. Son, that are of short stature. The challenges that I'm facing, starting from small steps that I'm using it, and then 3 tier steps that I use at the shows in the house that the days that this is not of the same people. Memory as so angry, and then a long time. I just get at home. I will other children with personal because I joke with me. They joke about me now. When I go out where I'm out, point the finger when it's raining, then in getting okay. They have to the mall like asking assistance from the security. They cannot reach. When I go, I'm always with someone to assist. Yeah, so low, but then for them to come, like the point is not to turn around. They have to include us to assist. They have to include like what else? So find solution to work hard. Because I mean, and voice out, like they must be vocal, voice out their challenges so that they can be assisted.
Were you able to hear everything and see clearly?
Yes, thanks, Melanie.
Okay, so as you can see, I'm a little bit taller than Itumaleng, but I also cannot see over the handlebars of the trolley. I also struggle to reach light switches sometimes. But I do drive my own car. I've got a hand control fitted in my car. I am lucky, I'm blessed in that way, but most persons of short stature or other disabilities do have to rely on public transport, which is really, really difficult. But I want to share, I see we are at 12 o'clock already. Would you allow me to just go for a couple of more minutes? I'm going to record this anyway, so if anybody has to leave, it's fine. I've still got the recording. So I just want to share a couple of interesting facts about dwarfism. So dwarfism is abnormal skeletal growth that can be caused by about 400 different genetic and medical conditions, which result then in short stature. There are two main categories. This is disproportionate dwarfism, where some parts of the body are smaller, while the other parts are normal size. And I can just note one maybe here at chondroplasia, where the torso and the head and the trunk is the normal size, and the legs and arms are shorter in proportion. And then the other side, the other main category is proportionate dwarfism, where the body is of average proportion. Everything is smaller to the same degree. And then it's always just, I don't want to really dwell on advocacy in this webinar, but just some things that I picked up, through the years. That terminology is so important. You can make or break a person by using the wrong or derogatory terminology. So words that is really hurtful is like midget, picky, or sometimes we are called the tokoloshi. I mean, people have really asked me the most horrible questions. For example, a friend of mine, I can maybe just use one example. A friend of mine who is a CA, a chartered accountant, and working for a big audit firm. Once there was a circus coming to town across the street, and one of his colleagues actually said to him, well, you can be so lucky, because if you haven't got a job here, you might as well just go across the road and you will be employed immediately. I mean, how cruel can you be? We face things like that on a regular basis, and that is why whenever I'm presented with an opportunity to educate someone, I do take it. When children come up to me, children stare. They notice that you are different. I mean, that's fine, it's normal. So please don't pull your child's arm off his body. Bring your child and ask me, would you like to just explain to my child why you are smaller than the average size person? And I would be happy to do so. So words can be very hurtful. Just use the person's name. That is the best way to go. But also you can talk about a person of short stature, a little person, or a dwarfism. Even if you call someone a dwarf, some people would accept it. I think that dwarfism is actually more used in medical context, because dwarfism is a condition. It is not the person. Okay, so And also people try to pick us up. They want to carry us around because we are small and cute. And they must just remember that we are not dolls and we are not playthings. We are normal people. We are mothers, we are fathers, we are doctors, lawyers, whatever occupation you can think of, we do. We need the reasonable accommodation to be able to do it. We need to remove some barriers in able for us to do it properly, but we can accomplish anything that anybody else can. So yeah, let me just continue my slide. I can maybe also just share some tips. So when you are approaching a person of short stature, you may, if there's a chair available, you can always go and sit on the chair to be the same level, but you can also just take one step back, and that would even out the difference immediately. So that person don't have to hurt their necks by looking up the whole time, and also feel comfortable with having a conversation without that major discrepancy in height. You can also, maybe if you see someone in a shopping center who cannot reach something, ask them, can I get something down for you? Or would you like me to place it where you can reach it for yourself? That would be wonderful if people can just ask. It's, please don't pick a person up to try and reach something. You might actually hurt them very badly. And also when you see a person of short stature or any disability fall, for example, don't jerk them up. You might actually hurt them more. Assess first, ask them, how can I help you to get up? Can I assist you in any way? That is the easiest thing to do. And then please don't pat us on the head. Oh, you're so cute. I just want to pick you up and take you home. Don't assume that our age and our abilities, because we are short, that we don't have the capability, or that we don't have the intellectual ability or whatever. Don't judge us by our appearance. We might be smaller in stature, but we are equal to anybody else in life. And that is the message that I want to convey to you. And that is me. All I can say is that educate people at every opportunity, advocate, and remove barriers in society. That is where real inclusion starts, is by removing barriers. And then we'll have a wonderful and inclusive society. And like Dr. Zier said, he's one of my favorite characters, is I think this is actually for every person, not only for persons with disabilities. But why would you like to fit in if you were born to stand out? Embrace your being different, embrace your uniqueness, and just shine, bloom wherever you are planted. Don't sell yourself short. Focus on your abilities and not the disabilities. And I always say when I'm faced with difficult situations that this too shall pass. Although it may be cloudy today, the sun is still shining above the clouds. And I think that is something that we can always remind ourselves on, and your children, and teach your children not be afraid to interact with persons with disabilities, but to approach them like they would any other kid. Yeah. So in conclusion, remember that October is Dwarfism Awareness Month. And if you would like to have more information about short stature and dwarfism in general, the medical conditions that's associated with it, or anything, please feel free to contact me. You've got my SARA address. You can also make contact with us via our Facebook page. Equal Citizens of Short Stature has also got a Facebook page where you can contact us, and I will be happy to share contacts with you and any information. So, have you got any questions for me?
Melanie, if I might add, it's a very inspirational story, so thank you so much. I just want to say that with regards to underrepresented groups, persons with short stature is very underrepresented. And it's one of the, for me, with regards to my responsibility on the CTPF and as the executive that's responsible for underrepresented groups, it's one of the things as well that I want to focus on with regards to being more inclusive and accessible. And when I talked about Tochem, persons from underrepresented groups were basically, they were in the minority, and especially those with those with short stature as well. And I think it's one of the things that we need to focus on. So my question for you, that I want to ask you, is with regards to terminology, because from an autistic point of view, and I think Sherry can also talk from an autism point of view as well. Um, when you look at especially referring to that, there's certain terminology that one uses, and therefore there's certain concepts that one uses that can that affects an individual's mental health, and also their perceptions. And I think when you look at autistic movement itself, it's very, the words that you use, one must be very careful with regards to words that you use, because it refers to the medical model versus the social model. And one I want to ask you with regards to your experiences, um, do you think that your past experiences, or an individual's past experience referring to persons with short stature, do you think their past experiences shape their perception with regards to the sort of terminology the one uses? Because I know you talked about that, so I just want your opinion on this.
Yes, Emil, definitely does. In the past, it was sort of accepted that all persons of short stature, the only job that they would be able to do, and unfortunately, that is still perceived today as be able to work in a circus as a clown, or as a party favor, or as someone to greet and meet and greet people at events. And unfortunately, that has become quite accepted even in the community of persons of short stature themselves. And that is something we need to guard against, because they don't know that this is actually an infringement on their rights, on their human rights. It's actually degrading them to something. And you know what? Sorry, I will come back to the terminologies now. It makes me think of our politicians, the people that is in our government that needs to be advocating for persons with disabilities, who are so uneducated and so blatantly goodness, what is lacking a word, like Minister Gwede Mantashe, who recently said that persons with that dwarfs, he actually called it like that, he said dwarfs are not people, and that persons with dwarfism hasn't got a disability. And we actually took him on that. And he actually said, well, he didn't really mean it like that. There was always some lame excuse for being cruel. And that this actually gets me very hot under the collar. But yes, terminology, unfortunately, is something that, and I would also like to mention the TV programs, and that's why I asked you about it, because in there's a lot of reality TVs now, shows nowadays, like Little People of LA, Little People of Dallas, which, yes, in a sense is good, because I think advocacy is good, even if it's, like they say, advertisement is good, even if it's bad advertisement. It does bring attention to this daily struggles of the persons with that specific disability, but they are portrayed as a bunch of, oh my goodness, catty women, and having parties, and I mean, I'm not saying that having a party is bad, but they are portrayed as really being goodness, I can almost say a bunch of hillbillies, or hooligans, and that's not the idea that we want to get across at all. So yes, good in a sense, bad in another sense. But terminology, again, I mean, some people might say, but there's nothing wrong with the word midget. We feel offended if someone would use the word midget. Why not use the proper name as a little person or a person of short stature? I mean, and if you are in doubt, ask. You can only learn if you ask. And I think people are afraid to interact with persons with disabilities simply because they are afraid to ask. It's a lack of education. It's a lack of knowledge. That's all it is.
Because the reason why I'm asking Melanie, it comes back to your question that you asked me about films and the education value that I actually portray with regards to society. It's, you see, from our perspective, I believe that, as someone who basically who familiarized myself more recently with the concept of persons with short stature,
Yes.
one wasn't exposed to that terminology when one was growing up.
Yeah.
And therefore, films as well as TV series, would basically use different other words, that can be quite discriminative as well.
That's
So
right.
in terms of that, I totally agree with you as well. And if you look specifically at these episodes that that you see on TV, especially referring to, there's one specific channel, TLC, which is quite, which is also got this daily lives of persons from short stature. But that's, for me, that's not the real deal, because they are basically portraying a different, they sending a different message that is not, that doesn't actually correspond with the individual's personal circumstances. And like you said just now about, how they change it into a more about fame, or more about, you know people being hooligans, people being, if I may use it, people that are being, that are these party animals, for instance, but they are not actually. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions as well. So I believe that in some cases it's good, but there's a limit, and therefore, I'm not quite sure that we get a real. I don't see that I don't see the education value in some of those programs.
You mentioned something else just now, Emil, also that South African culture, South African is a developing country, and we cannot be, on the same, we cannot be judged on the same scale as other Western first world countries. I mean, we've got a whole different and a lot of different cultures, not only one or two different cultures. And in some African cultures, babies born with any type of dwarfism are killed.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately there's still a lot of stigma, a lot of mythicism and stuff surrounding this condition, and that is something also that now, luckily, we are making some good progress in this area, and we can actually refer parents, to genetic counseling and medical services and also to educate them that this is nothing to be feared. It's something to be medically managed, and then continue with life as normal as possible. I mean, you are a normal person. You are packaged a little bit differently. You are smaller, but that's it. So yeah. Thank you so much for that question. We are running a little bit over our time. Are there any other questions that you might have for me? I don't see anything. Well, then all I have to do still, sorry, let me just get my glasses. I think there's one. That's just a thank you. Thank you so much. You are very welcome to give me a call. I will put my number in the chat if you would like to just give me a call quickly afterwards. And then there we go. If you would like to speak to me again. And then I can all say now, all I have to say now is thank you so much for Emil and Sherry and Suzette for sharing with us their lived experiences this morning and participating in this the webinar. We are looking forward to working with you in future again, Sherry and Emil. And we are going to still go on with the SARA Unstoppable project. So please, guys, keep your eyes on the Facebook page and on our SARA website for information about that. We are very excited about that. And also, we are going to launch a YouTube channel soon. So exciting times where disability is really not the negative and the low-hanging fruit, as everybody calls us. We are amazing people. We are unstoppable people, and we just want to share that with the world and share our abilities with the world. And I thank you so much for joining us this morning, and have a wonderful day further.
Thank you, Melanie. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, thank you.